At the end of last week's Torah portion, we read about Avraham Avinu's final test, and that is the test that God requests him to take his son, his favorite, his one and only, Yitzhak Avinu, and bring him up to the top of the mountain as a sacrifice. And the whole time it was a very interesting episode. On one hand, Avraham Avinu knows what's happening. On the other hand, Yitzhak doesn't even know what's going to be done to him until the very final moment where Yitzhak is thinking that there must be an animal. He's asking his father, where's the animal that we're going to slaughter? His father says, don't worry, Hashem will show it to us. Until Yitzhak is placed by his father on the altar. Now it's important to note that Yitzhak Avinu was no less than 37 years old during this episode. He was a grown man. He was an adult. And nevertheless, he did not question his father. He knew that whatever his father was doing was for the best. He knew that his father was a prophet of God, and he was doing what God commanded him to do. Yet he tells his father, please tie me down, so this way I don't move. I don't move the knife. I don't punch or kick you by mistake. He wanted to go, once he realized what was going on, the right way. And then we obviously know the Torah continues. And God sends an angel and tells him to stop. After Avraham draws the knife, the slaughtering knife, and it's already placed on Yitzhak Avinu's neck, the angel says, stop, do not continue. Avraham is taking a double take. He's saying, stop bothering me. Who's that? He wanted to make sure that it wasn't the Yetzer Hara speaking to him. And again, the angel says, stop, do not. And Avraham Avinu's telling Hashem, or telling the angel, let me just make a little slit, let me at least draw blood to consider this as a real sacrifice. And God tells him, no, absolutely not. It is as if your son was brought on this altar, as if he was sacrificed, and the dust of his ashes, as if he would have been burnt, will always be here on the Mizbeach, on this altar, as if it would have been done, as a tremendous merit for the future generations of your descendants. And then he tells him, look up. He looks up and he sees a ram which was created over 2,100 years ago by the sixth day of creation and was brought on the altar in Isaac's place. During this episode, there was a troublemaker. The troublemaker's name was Og. Og was that giant, the Midrash tells us, that hung on the back of Noah's Ark and survived 1 year hanging on the back of Noah's Ark during the time of the flood. And he goes over to Sarah and he stirs up a problem. He comes over to Sarah and nonchalant goes to her and says, where's your husband and your son? She said, I don't know, they must be doing what they always do. They're going out, teaching people Torah, teaching them about God, maybe feeding them. They're doing what they got to be doing. And Og says, I don't think so. I think they're up to something. And she says, what could they be up to? He's like, I heard that 4 people left. They were going towards a mountain. She says, stop messing with me. What's going on? And he says, look over there. And miraculously, he was able to point to, and they were able to, as the Midrash says, look very far away to the top of a mountain, seeing Avraham Avinu at that moment when he had the knife on Yitzhak's throat, seeing her own son bound to the Mizbeach, to the altar. And at that moment, she passed away. Out of sadness, even though her son was 37 years old. She was 90 years old when he was born. To her, it was ripping her apart. And she passed away on that account. Finally, Avraham Avinu comes back, sees that Sarah passed away, purchases a burial plot, and buries her. At that moment, the Mefarshim explain, Avraham Avinu felt, I need to get my son married. It's about time he gets married. He's 37 years old. Now he has to get married. Why? He felt the loss of his wife. His son was almost killed, almost sacrificed. He didn't know how much longer there was to be for himself or for anyone else. He says, if I want to continue this lineage, if I want to have descendants, I better get Yitzhak married as soon as possible so that he can start having children as well. And so it was. Yet it took 3 years until he deploys his faithful servant Eliezer to go find a wife. And this evening we're going to spend time through the lens of the Zera Shimshon on understanding this character, which I'll go so far to say the main character of this week's Torah portion, Chaye, understanding who he was, why he was chosen, and further details. To start off, the Torah tells us in chapter 24, verse 2, and I quote, Vayomer Avraham el Avdo, Zikan Beto, HaMoshel Bechol Asher Lo, Simna Yadecha Tachat Yerechi. Avraham Avinu comes to his servant. The Torah doesn't even tell us his name at first. It actually calls him 3 different titles. It says he's Avdo, he's a slave, he's the Zikan Beto, he's the elder, and he's HaMoshel Bechol Asher Lo, and he was the ruler, the controller of Avraham Avinu's businesses and his house. And he tells him, come place your hand under my thigh because I need you to swear to me that you are only going to take a girl from my family and none of the local girls. Eliezer tells Avraham Avinu, 1 second, why are we looking so far? Sometimes in life we look far for answers when they're right under our nose. I have a daughter. That would be a great opportunity. My daughter, your son, what could be better? Yet Avraham Avinu answers, and not in a disrespectful way, it was just a mere fact. He tells Eliezer, my son is blessed, your daughter is cursed. And a blessed and a cursed are not compatible, they should not be together. What did Abraham mean by that? That's insulting. I'm blessed, you're cursed. Stay back. Keep your daughter to yourself. We're going to find a pure daughter, a pure girl for my son. That could be very insulting. Why would Avraham Avinu do such a thing? Yet the answer lies, I think, in a midrash. I read this midrash in the Midrash Me'am Loez. It says as follows. Who was Eliezer, Abraham's slave? Where did he originate from? Where is he from? So listen to what he says. We remember a couple weeks ago we read the Torah, we read at the end of Parashat Noach that Avraham leaves his father's land. But what happened before that? There was a showdown. There was a debate between Avraham and Nimrod. Nimrod was the king of the land. He was powerful, he was wealthy, he was smart. He worshipped idols, he promoted idols. He considered himself a type of God. And Avraham Avinu comes and says, there can't be. There's only one God and it's not you. And Nimrod said, oh really? So I guess your God is greater than the God of fire. Avraham said, correct. My God created the fire. Nimrod says, very well. Let's test your God versus the God of fire. And he invites Avraham Avinu to enter the furnace, the fiery furnace. And so it was. Avraham Avinu was put in the furnace and he came out untouched. Not a burn, not a scratch, everything perfect. Nimrod was embarrassed. This was in front of the whole population. Nimrod was embarrassed. Terach, Avraham's father, was embarrassed. It was evident that the politically right thing for Avram to do was to leave town. Besides for God telling him to leave town, it was not his place. But Nimrod did something before Avraham Avinu leaves, the Midrash says. Nimrod gave Eliezer to Avraham as a gift, as a slave. And there's different opinions the Me'am Loez brings down. One opinion was Eliezer was Nimrod's own slave. And out of mere fact that he lost that debate with Avraham, he gave him as like a token, like, okay, you won. enough. He gave him his own slave Eliezer. Yet another opinion says Eliezer was Nimrod's son. And he gave his son to Avraham as a slave. This reminds us of what Paro does with his own daughter. Paro saw how blessed Avraham and Sarah was. He gave Hagar his own daughter. He said, it's better that this princess, my daughter, be a slave to such a righteous and holy man. And so it was. So when Avraham Avinu is telling Eliezer, my son's blessed, your daughter's cursed, it's not coming to insult him. It's a fact. You're either the slave of Nimrod or you are the son of Nimrod. But either way, this is not the right match for my son. And that's how he explains Avdo. The Imam Loes continues and says, you know what Zekan Beto is? Zekan Beto means he was wise. Why was he wise? Well, he was either the slave of the king or the son of the king. And both of them are very smart and very wise. They get a special education. They get a royal education. They have experience being around the king. So he was a slave. He was Nimrod's slave. Now Abraham's. Zekan Beto, he was very wise. And Hamoshel Bechol Asher Lo, the Imam Loes explains that he was able to overcome his own inclination, his own desire and lust, and serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu through Avraham Avinu rather than give in to his own Yetzer Hara. That's the way the Imam Loes explains it. The Zera Shimshon has a different outlook. Zera Shimshon asks, why is Eliezer called Zekan Beto? Why is he called the elder, the wise man? The Torah is coming and justifying a question we all have. If Avraham Avinu decided that Yitzhak has to get married, so why doesn't he go and choose a wife for Yitzhak? And if he's going to choose someone, why is he choosing a slave? The Talmud tells us, the Mishnayot and Pirkei Avot tell us, in multiple places, that the more slaves a person has, the more they are robbed. The more slave a person has, the more promiscuity and immorality there is in the person's home. Slaves are not trustworthy. Slaves are not ethical or moral. They're slaves. Why would Avraham Avinu choose a slave to go find and select the proper girl for his son? And with the words Zekan Beto, the Zera Shimshon said the Torah is answering it. The Torah is answering that Avraham Avinu, he was a busy man, he was involved, he was tending to hundreds of people. So who did he choose to go find a wife for his son? His right-hand man, his faithful servant, his wise servant. The Talmud tells us in Masechet Yomah that Eliezer was referred to as Damesek Eliezer. What does Damesek Eliezer mean? Damesek is a play on words, as the Talmud says, and I quote, Doleu mashke mitorat rabo la'acherim. He would draw from the well of Avraham Avinu, of his wisdom, and he would give to drink from that to the rest. He was not only a very smart man, he was a learned man. He was not only a learned man, he was a teacher. He was Avraham Avinu's assistant and helper. He was teaching Torah. The Torah of Avraham Avinu, the emunah and the bitachon, and the knowledge of God to the others. The Torah is telling us, Zekan Beto, he was wise, he was righteous, he was a believer, he was befitting this position to go out and select a bride for Yitzhak Avinu. And that's what the word Zekan Beto is coming and telling us as Zera Shimshon. However, he brings another question. He asks, Avraham Avinu was known to fulfill the Torah even before the Torah was given. Avraham Avinu was born in the year 1948, and 100 years later, he finally has his son, and now that's 40 years after that. So we're almost the year 2100 at this point. And Avraham Avinu still is fulfilling the Torah, even though the Torah was given a long time later. The Torah was given in 2448. So we have over here a couple hundred years before. Nevertheless, Avraham Avinu was fulfilling the Torah through nevuah, through prophecy, in his own way, the way God gave it to him. How is Avraham Avinu fulfilling the Torah yet teaching a slave Torah, which the Rambam, as well as in the Talmud, all explain is prohibited? Teaching a Gentile Torah is also prohibited, unless it's for purposes of conversion and preparing them for what they're going to have to do when they become a Jew. It's prohibited to teach a Gentile Torah as well. So how is Avraham Avinu teaching Eliezer, a slave, which the Talmud says you're not allowed to do, Torah, and he's going and teaching others? How does Avraham Avinu condone this? Asks the Zera Shimshon. He gives two answers. His first answer is, Eliezer was not your regular type of slave. The Torah tells us he was hamoshel bechol asher lo. He was the supervising slave. He did not work hours like everybody. He did not have to do what everyone else did. At this point in Eliezer's life, he was the executive slave. And therefore, Eliezer had time on his hands. And it wasn't that Avraham Avinu was actively teaching him or promoting him to learn Torah or even teach Torah. He had time on his hands. He made for himself the decision that he's going to learn Torah and he's going to teach Torah. And he listened and he read and he got into it and he asked questions. And it wasn't Avraham Avinu who was telling him or teaching him to learn Torah. Rather, he was doing it on his own. Yet I think his second answer is a little better, and from this I want to pull out a message. The second answer is you know what he was learning from Avraham Avinu, and Avraham Avinu was actually teaching him, was the laws which pertain to him as a slave in a Jewish household. A slave in a Jewish household has to tend to their business. For example, they have to know that the meat dishes and the milk dishes have to stay separate. They have to know that on Shabbat and on the holidays there are certain things and certain laws and preparations prior and during the Shabbat and the holiday that have to be made. There's certain rules with the way they dress. No linen and wool together. When they're doing the laundry on the tzitzit, they have to know a way to do it so this way the tzitzit doesn't get tangled up. And all other type of laws that have to do with the kitchen, a Jewish kitchen, and many more. And this is what Avraham Avinu was teaching Eliezer, and this is what Eliezer was teaching to the rest of the slaves. So it wasn't that he was learning Torah because he's not allowed to. It's true, a slave is not allowed to learn Torah. Avraham Avinu is not allowed to teach Torah to a slave. What was he teaching? He was teaching the practical Torah concepts which pertain to him in order that he fulfills his purpose and plays his role as a proper individual, as his character in this story and back then in the world. Now, how to make this applicable to us? It's a sensitive topic, but I'm confident I will deliver it in a proper way, hopefully not to offend anybody. And as the creations of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, each and every creation has a specific purpose. Inanimate objects have their purpose. Plants have their purpose in creation. Animals, Gentiles, Yehudim, each have their purpose in creation. And by no means does it make one greater than the other. Yes, maybe now with our human mind we'd say it's greater to be a plant than a rock, or greater to be an animal than a plant. But that's not the point. The point is we need plants, we need rocks, we need animals, we need Gentiles, and we need Jews. We need everything and everybody to make up this magnificent world God created. After all, He created it this way. And even within Judaism, there are different roles. There are Kohanim, there are Leviim, and there are Israel. There are men, and there are women, and there are children yet to be adults. And each and every one has their specific role. There are certain things that only Kohanim can do. And there are certain things that Leviim can only do. And there are certain roles that are set out for non-Kohanim and Levim, as we call Israel. And by no means does one say, I want to do, or I would wish if I could. No, we accept the way God created us. Even when it comes to men and women. Men have certain roles, and women have certain roles. It doesn't mean that one role is greater than the other. Certain responsibilities fall on the plate of the man of the house, and certain responsibilities fall on the plate of the woman of the house. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew this. And when he gave the Torah to Bnei Israel, he did make a difference in the realm of obligation towards that of men and that of women. HaKadosh Baruch Hu understood that the healthiest way for children to grow up is for them to spend more time with their mother than their father. He created women with a certain amount of compassion and patience and love and tender care, which works better towards raising the children. And unfortunately, families that break up, or lo alenu, a mother which passes away, children that are raised by men are different. It's obviously a joint effort. It takes a husband and a wife, a father and a mother to raise healthy, stable children. But we can all agree there's nothing like a mother's touch when it comes to the children. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu understood that, and therefore, many of the obligations the Torah gives are more directed towards the men opposed to the women. The Talmud calls it time-bound positive mitzvot. And I'll give a couple of examples, which men are obligated in and women are exempt from. For example, a classic one, talit and tefillin. Talit and tefillin are an obligation. It is a positive act to do, and it's also time-bound. Why is it time-bound? Because they are to be donned and worn during the day. That's limiting it by time. And because of that, God said women are exempt from that. They don't need to connect to me through a minyan, through a talit, and through a tefillin. When one woman stands alone, by herself, praying, that is as if 10 men are together as a quorum, with talit and with tefillin on. It takes 10 men with 10 pairs of tefillin and 10 talits, prayer, to equal one woman's prayer. And God knew that. And therefore, that's one example. There are other examples. But by negative mitzvot, by something which is negative, meaning a do not do, that's for all. That's for men and women alike. It's only going out of your way and spending time on doing something which God comes and He says the women are exempt from because they have other duties. And more than that, they don't need this to connect to me. They are closer. And that's empowering. Yet, on the other hand, as Jews, we have an obligation to learn Torah. Ve'agita bo yomam v'layla. We have an obligation to learn Torah day and night. And that is the active mitzvah, which the way the Talmud explains is a specific obligation on men. Because again, women have other obligations which are necessary for the children to be raised. So according to the Talmud, the obligation men have towards learning Torah is more than, when I say more than, more in amount than the obligation women have to. Yet, and I'm getting to my point, women still have to learn the Torah aspects which apply to them. For example, the laws of Shabbat, the laws of family purity, the laws of keeping a kosher kitchen. These laws are not only available, but an obligation for women to learn because those are practical to them. A man or woman who does not learn the laws of Shabbat is bound to fail and not keep Shabbat properly. Same thing when it comes to the laws of family purity, the same thing to the laws of keeping a kosher kitchen. Same thing that anything, for example, the laws of Lashon Hara. That's not something that only men need to learn. Men and women need to learn that because it's something which applies to our daily life. But the laws of the Beit HaMikdash, and the laws of Mashiach, and the laws or the stories of the Torah are not an absolute obligation for women to learn because they have other responsibilities. And God acknowledged that when He gave the Torah to the world. And that is not to say that women are not encouraged to learn all parts of Torah. They're welcome to. By no means does it limit them. But as men, we have this obligation to learn the book from cover to cover, to learn the Talmud, to learn the Shulchan Aruch from cover to cover, where women have only that obligation to learn what pertains to them that is more practical to them. So on one hand, it's kind of reducing it. Yet on the other hand, there are many women who don't go out to learn. And it is something the Torah tells us is incumbent on a woman to know what it is practical for her to do, to fulfill the Torah, to fulfill the halakha. Just as Eliezer. What Torah was Eliezer learning? What Torah did Avraham Avinu teach Eliezer? Only the parts which apply to him being the position that he was. And with this will end, that in the merit of the Zera Shimshon, in the merit of all our great Chachamim, that as men, Hashem will give us the strength and the courage and the wisdom to learn the whole Torah, even the parts which are not applicable to us, because we have that obligation. And to the women, Hashem will give them strength and allow them to find time, as they're always so good at finding time, because women are great multitaskers. Women know how to prioritize things in a greater way than men. And also help women, our wives, our daughters, our community members, to also find time to learn those topics of Torah which pertain to them, which is the only way to enable any individual, men and women alike, to fulfill the Torah in its proper way, according to the halakha. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless us. May the Zera Shimshon bless us, that we will always know how to fulfill the Torah in the greatest possible way. Amen v'amen.